Pittsburgh, Tennessee, originally from the Huntsville area. He's the youth minister there at Church Street. He's married to Bonnie, and they have two boys. Website at chadl.co. He talks to other ministers and youth ministers about technology on his podcast called Ministry Bits, and you'll want to check that out if this interests you. There's a lot of information there, a lot of things that you can learn from. He speaks frequently at area churches using his active digital parenting curriculum, and that's what he's going to be sharing with us today. We'll have 2 sessions this afternoon at 3 o'clock. The schedule and the topics are in the bulletin if you want a little bit more detail on that. But tonight at 6 o'clock, he's going to be speaking for our youth series that we're hosting tonight, and he'll be talking about what will Jesus tweet. So if you have teenagers, encourage them to be here. If you're visiting and you have teenagers, then encourage them to come, and it's going to be an uplifting night. We're going to have chili and grilled cheese sandwiches after tonight's worship service, so hopefully, I'm pretty sure we'll have plenty, so everybody come, and if we start running out, we'll order pizza or something, and that'd be a good problem to have. But we just want to encourage you to sacrifice a little bit of your afternoon, be here at 3 o'clock for those sessions, and I guarantee you won't regret it, because you're going to gain a annex set up, so many hands make for less work, so that would be great. And I'm not going to take up any more of Chad's time, but let me turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Jess. And I was driving here yesterday in the driving rain, coming across 65 across to the state line of Alabama, great state of Alabama, and I'm sitting here and I'm going, and the rain slacked off and the clouds kind of parted and the sunshine came out, and I smiled and I said, Alabama. And then it rained 5 minutes later, so happy to be here with you this morning, and I am very encouraged. Says to say hello. He's a good friend of mine. I work with him on several book projects, and he says he has very dear friends here at Killen, and he says to say hello this morning. And I am very honored and privileged that Jess and the leadership here would have me here. And let's get started and talk about how we can help our families make wise choices with technology this morning. Helping your family make wise choices with technology. That's a very interesting topic. And the first question that you have to ask yourself is why? I'll primarily be talking to parents this morning. Teenagers, I apologize if I'm telling the parents anything incriminating to help you make your lives miserable on social network. I apologize in advance. Your talk will be tonight, I promise. But parents, I'm primarily talking to you this morning. And you have to ask yourself why. Why is this so important? Why do I need to pay attention to these things? Why do I need to figure out what Twitter and Facebook and all these other different things are? And I think the biblical answer is the verse that was read earlier, is in Psalm 127, verse 1. And that verse says, unless the Lord builds the house, those that build it labor in vain. I don't think I'm wrong this morning when I say that this is a group of parents, a group of grandparents, a group of guardians, a group of whatever section you fit in that cares about your child's, I guess we can call it, digital development. You care about what your kids are seeking out online. You care about what networks they're on. You care about these different things, yet you just kind of seem lost. But this verse that Psalms tells us about, it says, unless every brick, every facet of your home is built by the Lord, then what are we doing it for? It's all in vain. Sometimes we don't look at the internet or technology or the smartphones or the devices or the social networks or any of this kind of stuff as something that has a big part in our lives, and we may be ignoring the biggest part of our lives. These things have not just become parts of our lives, they are our lives now. We live out our lives on social networks and videos and YouTube and all these other different things. We communicate with these devices that are inside of our pockets that have never been more powerful. The device in your pocket right now is more powerful than anything that has ever been invented in the history of mankind. You can access anything. We're going to talk about that here in just a second. But sometimes we look at the internet as an afterthought. Sometimes we as parents, we see it as something that is so big and fast and complex and unmanageable that we can't do anything about it. But in fact, it's an integral piece of the home puzzle. That's what today is all about. Today is all about helping you put the pieces together. We had an excellent session this morning. I want to make sure to invite you out to our afternoon sessions that are going to be much more practical and hands-on, and you can actually see steps to start looking at your computers and your iOS devices to help protect your children and protect those you love. But that raises an interesting question. Your children have lives online. The people you love have lives online. Do you know what they're doing? Kids that have been born in the last decade will never know what it's like. The kids down here that are very young, that are sitting right here in front of me, will never know a world and what it's like to not be constantly connected. They will never know what it's not like to have all these different things. They will never use things like America Online. We all remember that, don't we? Right? The crazy, quirky sounds that it makes when you had to actually connect to the internet, right? It wasn't just there, right? And most kids don't even know what this is. I had a kid, I was talking about using a payphone back. I was telling a story back when I was in high school with our youth group, and the kids were, I said, I went into a phone booth and I put the quarter in, I used the thing, and the kids were like, and I said, you know, a payphone, you know, you have to put a quarter in, and they're like, a pay-as-you-go phone? Like a cell phone? And I'm like, no, a payphone. They don't know. Kids don't know. Technology has moved so far and so fast in the last 10 years. It's amazing. But they will never know what it's like to not be constantly connected. I want you to imagine for a second, this is a picture of Church Street in 1898. Okay, my house is where that tree is on the far left-hand side right there. That's where my house is. We live right next to the church building. And this was taken in 1898 when the church building was barely just there. Now imagine you took an iPhone back 100 years to Florence, Alabama, and everything worked, and you could show people different things and show them videos and things like that. They would be fascinated. They would think that you were a sorcerer, actually. They would think that there's some kind of magic that they are seeing. They would not believe. And you would say something really, really profound like, with this device, I can access the wealth of all human knowledge. And they would say, well, what do you use it to do? And you would say something, well, I use it to look at cat pictures. We have to understand, and I use that stupid illustration for a reason, we have to understand that we are literally putting devices like iPhones and iPads in our children's hands, and they can access anything. And it is unparalleled the way that we can access the wealth of all human knowledge in the palm of our hands. There's never been a time like this in history. There are philosophers from Greek times of old turning over in their graves wishing that they had something like this resource in their pockets. But I've been a parent for about 3 years now. This is not my son, but you gotta love stock photography. I've been a parent for about 3 years now, and even my little son Jacob, who's going to be 3 in 7 days, uses technology. Sometimes he knows how to navigate it better than I do. He'll pick up the iPad and navigate to what he wants to watch. He'll push it and he'll stop it and he'll go to another video. He'll do all sorts of things, and I'm sure you've seen your children do the same exact things. Your teenagers, we actually have a thing at Church Street where we have older people of our congregation and our young people of our congregation come together, and the old people teach them their board games, dominoes and Go Fish and different things like that, and the young people help them fix their cell phones. And it's really, really great because the kids just know these things. My kids know these things. I have a 6-month-old son as well. He's going to be using technology anyway. But what is going to happen when he gets to this stage? What's going to happen when he's 10, when he's 12, when he's 18? What have I done, and what am I preparing to do, and what am I going to do to protect him from the dangers? Because there are lots and lots of dangers out there. There's a few things as parents that we need to realize before we move on. Number one is we can never use the excuse that we didn't know. I had a little mistake about 6 years ago with my taxes. Now, if you don't know how taxes are structured as a minister, and all the ministers in the room are just smiling and nodding their head right now, Taxes as a minister are absolutely a disaster. That's why I pay $200 to a guy that specializes in minister's taxes to do my taxes every single year, because I don't want to have to fiddle around with it. But in 2009, in my first full year of ministry, I had about a $4,000 mistake. And my excuse to the IRS was, I didn't know. How sympathetic do you think they were? You see, we're not going to have any sympathy from the world when our kids, or when the people that influence our kids, their friends and other people online and different things like that, we're not going to have the excuse. We're not going to be able to use that excuse that you didn't know. If you can navigate a computer, if you can look at these different things, and you can look at the internet and say, and use Google basically, you can find resources to help you combat this problem. Proverbs 19 verse 2 says that desire without knowledge is not good. I'm sure every parent in this room has the desire that you want your kids to be safe. You want to know how to do these things, yet you just maybe don't know how. That's primarily what the afternoon sessions are going to be about, to exactly tell you how to do that. We're going to give some tips here at the end this morning. But we cannot use the excuse that we didn't know. If you can use Google, you can find these things out. Number 2, and this may not make the kids on the front rows here very happy, but your child does not yet have the experience or willpower to keep themselves in check on the internet. We know adults that don't have the experience and willpower to keep themselves in check on the internet, so why could we expect our kids to do the same thing? It's something interesting to think about. You know, we don't trust our kids to drive cars until they're 16 because we as a society have decided that operating a 3,000-pound motor vehicle is something that you can't do responsibly until you're age 16. So why are we giving our 10-year-olds unlocked and unprotected iPhones and iPads? Why are we not watching what they do online and who they're talking to and what videos they're watching and who they're talking to on Xbox and what games they're playing and all these other different things? Yeah, it's another full-time job keeping up with all that stuff. But you know what? As parents, and even sometimes as grandparents and caregivers, we've got to do that. If you have a child with an iPhone or iPad or an iPod or a computer at home that doesn't have parental controls set, you're asking for a disaster. Imagine for a second that you turn your kids loose on a playground. You had small kids, you turn them loose on a playground, and you never watched what they did, and you hoped they never got hurt. That's the equivalent of turning your kids loose on the internet, the digital playground of the world. We cannot expect and never watch our kids and hope that they never get hurt. It's not a matter of finding if they find something bad, and most of our kids, I think, that we can agree are good and they want to do what's right. But we have to understand it's not that, it's the outside influences that are going to primarily cause your child to either do or see or have something bad happen to them online. Speaking of bad things, and I don't mean to scare you at all, but these are some statistics that just absolutely blow my mind. An estimated 60% of the internet is pornography. There are over 3.5 billion web pages on the web, and 60% of those are dedicated to pornography. That's incredible. So even this next one right here, 1 in 5 searches made on a mobile device, and I'm talking about iPhones, iPads, tablets, these different things, are for porn. 1 in 5, 20%. A couple of different things here, and I don't know why that says, but it's squished a little bit, but it says parents are the weak link in the chain when it comes to protecting their children. We can't be the weak link. This right here, stats you need to know. The average age of the first exposure to internet pornography is 11 years old. Actually, they redid this study. This study was done in 2011. They redid this study this year. It's more closer to 8 years old now. You think your kid's too young to find those different things? Have viewed pornography online, most while doing homework. Why do you think that is? Parents aren't home from work yet. Kids get off the bus 3 o'clock, 3:30. Parents don't get home till 5. That's the worst time. You've got to have things set in place, and we're going to hopefully teach you how to do that in our sessions this afternoon. Do these numbers shock you? Do they surprise you? I'm not trying to scare you, I'm trying to inform you. And this stuff is out there, even if we don't stay on top of it. And if we don't stay on top of it, our kids will be in trouble. The third thing that we need to remember as parents is there is no such thing as a big illusion. If you think for a moment that you are sending a private message or a direct message to somebody, even over an app like Snapchat, there's nothing private about it. I use the bucket of feathers illustration for this. And I say this right here. Anyone with a computer and the right tools and knowledge can get any information about you that they want. That's scary. Because any photo, any text, anything that's sent under a supposedly private guise has to go through so many different things that somebody with the right tools and knowledge can intercept that data. I equate this to the bucket of feathers. Feathers go everywhere, right? And I joked around in class. I said, unless you're like Amari Cooper fast, then you're not going to be able to get all those feathers back, and odds are you won't get hardly any of them back. The illustration means that when we put something out there, it is out there. I told parents this morning I saw several jaws drop that Facebook, even after you delete your account, keeps your photos for 60 months. That's incredible. They keep your photos on their server. They keep your account inactive on their server for 60 months. What can you do this morning? First of all, you can just be informed. Just being by here today, you have shown an interest in maybe acknowledged your lack of ability and lack of knowledge here on this topic. And as parents, and even us who are maybe not parents anymore, even those who have college students, who have older children, maybe we should be looking at this as well. Proverbs 19:2, again, desire without knowledge is not good. We must put those two together, desire and knowledge, so that we can help keep our kids safe. Parents, number two, you need to be where your children are. And what I mean by that is if your kids are on Facebook, then you need to be on Facebook. If they're on Twitter, even if you don't know what Twitter is, you still need to be on Twitter. Studies have shown that kids who are watched, who know that their parents are watching them, are less likely to seek out bad things. Remember, you are the parent and you make the rules. If we're following God's rules primarily for our home, then God makes our rules, and that makes it a lot easier on us. If your kids cannot abide by them, or they don't get to be on that particular site, if they don't want you following them on that social network, then they don't get to be on that particular social network. That's the rules. And I always have parents come to me sometimes and say, well, what about my child's privacy? For one, there's no such thing as privacy on the internet, so the question is moot anyway. But two, as long as your child's living in your house, as long as they're under your protection, and that's what they are, there shouldn't be anything that's private. They have no rights to privacy. Your child maybe cannot discern and control what they click on or what they do or what they act on or what they see or what they fill in the blank. They don't understand why putting their address and social security number on Facebook is a bad thing sometimes. And the worst part of this is that your kids may not talk about you. They may not talk to you about their issues. But you can rest assured that they're telling the world about it on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all these different things. So what are you doing to manage it? We have to be where our kids are. I really don't like Facebook. I despise Facebook. I've been on there for a very long time. But I have a list of Church Street Youth Group list, and I have similar ones on Instagram, and I have similar ones on Twitter, where I just go down every Monday morning and I look at what our kids have been posting. And if there's anything questionable at all, I take a screenshot, put it in an email, and email it directly to the parents, no questions asked. My parents know that I have a no-tolerance policy for those sorts of things, and they will know, even if they don't know, about what their kids are doing and saying on social media. But you can't depend on somebody like me to be a watch for your kids. You cannot depend on somebody like me to do that. You must be where they are. You must take responsibility for this entire life that they are living, with apps and with games and with websites and social networks and all those different things. Number three, we need to plan with the end in mind. Let me ask you a question this morning, parents, first. Ask yourself this: who do I want my child to be when he leaves home? Teenagers, who do you want to be when you go to college? What kind of person do you want to be when you go to college? Because as I said before, these kind of things are shaping our lives. The interactivity that you have on these apps and social networks and different things are shaping your lives. They have become our lives. It's the way we communicate, we play games, we look up information. Technology will be even more of a central part of your child's life when they graduate high school, whether it's a year from now or 10 years from now, than it is today. Proverbs 22:6 is a verse that we've heard a million times, but it still rings true so well. Train up a child in the way that he should go, even when he is old, he will not depart from it. No airline pilot takes off without knowing exactly where that plane is going. They always have a plan. They always have a flight plan. They always have an idea, a plan to where they're going. So you need to think about these things. Now, when we're getting to the end of this talk this morning, you're saying, Chad, what am I supposed to do? You make it seem so bleak and impossible and try to keep up with all this technology and stuff. What am I supposed to do? There's just a few things that you can do when you go home after lunch today. You can do when you get home today. Number one, you can make a list of devices in your home that access the internet. I think you'd be incredibly surprised at how many devices in your home access the internet. Think about all of them. Think about the Kindle Fire. Think about the iPod Touch. Think about the other business cell phone that you have. Think about the DVR that you have, your smart TV. Think about all the things that you have access to that have access to the internet, and make a list of those, and then make that list again and say, how many of these do I have parental controls set on? How many of these do I have restrictions set on? That's what we need to think about. And I have right here, have your quote-unquote home computer in a public place. There is no such thing as a home computer anymore, is there? There's so many handheld devices and tablets and different things like that. What you can do is have your home computer or whatever that device is, have them in a public place. If they're on their tablet playing a game, have them in the kitchen with you in the afternoon while you're cooking dinner. Have them in the living room where you can see the screen and see what they're doing at all times. You know, one of the biggest regrets I have that parents come up to me and say is, I wish that I would have never had my kids have televisions or technology in their rooms, because that's where they got into the most trouble. We need to be cognizant of that. This one the teenagers will hate, and they're shooting me bad looks right now as we speak. Take up all devices at bedtime. Your child does not need to be texting or watching videos at 2 a.m. They don't need to be playing games. I have heard stories of kids where their parents started doing this, and the kids would sneak back into the house. And I'm not saying all your kids are bad, but I've just heard these from very few parents. The kids would sneak back in, grab whatever device it is, go play on it for a couple hours, and put it back, and their parents would never know. You need to make sure that you can do this, and you need to make sure that you can secure these devices. You know, I have kids and parents all the time that say, well, I use my phone as an alarm. Well, alarm clocks are $9 at Walmart. Go get one. So that's what I had to do when I was growing up, and I'm sure you had to do the same thing. The last one right here is talk to your kids. You might be very surprised at how forthcoming they are about the things that they're doing online, about what videos they're watching, about the creep who was on Xbox Live who cussed at them, about all these other different things that they'll tell you about sometimes if you ask. I know that our talk has not been primarily evangelistic this morning, but in closing this morning, we cannot forget the reason why we are here. We cannot forget the reason that Jesus Christ died on the cross to save us from our sins. And I know this message hasn't been primarily evangelistic, but the message of guiding our children through the minefield of the internet carries so many different responsibilities and implications to us being Christian leaders in Christian homes. This morning, are we leading our kids to Christ? This morning, are we leading our families in a way that God would think? Are we building a biblical home? A big part of that is technology. If you need to be forgiven this morning, if you need prayers from the church, we can pray for you this morning. If you need to be baptized in the water for the remission of your sins, for the forgiveness of all that you've done, you can do that this morning. Let me ask you this question as we close. Why do you wait if you haven't become a Christian? You can get back on the path this morning. If you need to get back on the path, we can baptize you this morning. Why don't you come forward right now while we stand and while we sing?